the number of people who've signed up, in light of the amount of time that it took to get to this point of the evening, we're going to try something a little bit different here. We're going to, it'll be important to listen up, because what we're going to do is, in fairness to the people who've been here all through the evening, this point with the two issues, Apfo and with the mulch and compost legislation, we'd like to give each group, the folks who sign up for each of those, time to testify, but also in light of the fact we're not going to get nearly anywhere complete tonight, and we're going to continue this public hearing at our next session in September. Okay, we'll announce very specific dates and times as we get to it. We have our next session, and actually, Ms. Fellmark, what is the public hearing date in September?
The regular public hearing date is September 18th, and you've agreed to begin at 6 p.m.
Right, so that's our published time, September 18th at 6 p.m. We are investigating adding an additional day of public hearing in September. Have we confirmed that date?
You have all indicated you're available Monday, September 11th at 6 p.m.
Monday, September 11th at 6 p.m. So we anticipate identifying the continuation of the public hearing on that day on the 11th, and then again on the 18th for a regular testimony or a regular public hearing for September legislation. Now, that if we do get through the remainder of the public hearing on the 11th, then we'll just continue with our regular schedule in September. So to accomplish that this evening, and again, in fairness to all the folks who've come out, we're going to call 15 names from each of the groups. If your name is not called, it's because we don't think we'd get to you before midnight. Okay, and we're going to go first with Apfo, because that's the order we had, and then we'll go over. But the 15 names I call, we will hear from this evening, and then if your name is not called, then you will be automatically signed up for the next hearing. Okay, and we'll welcome you back there. At any time, you are welcome to also again provide your testimony in writing, and again it will come to the council. It will be part of the official record, and I think I speak for my colleagues that we are looking over all the hearing testimony we're getting in email. Yes.
Mr. Chair, can you just clarify the plan as far as for those that are next, like 16, 17? Is that on the 11th or the 18th? Where are we starting?
Right. So the plan is we will start at 6 o'clock on the 11th, okay, with the continuation of this hearing, 6 o'clock on September 11th, with number 16 for Apfo. We'll go first, and we'll go through whoever's signed up this evening. Okay, and then we'll pick it up with, and then after that we'll go into the people who've signed up for the appropriate mulch CB60.
Will people still be allowed to sign up though after, and then would they then go then, or would they go on the 18th?
Ms. Feldmark, we talked about this before, and I'm sorry at this late time I don't recall our decision.
I believe you would allow additional folks to sign up for the 11th. Right. We would only carry over tonight's legislation to the 18th if we in fact don't have time to finish on the 11th.
11th, correct. Okay. So, and we'll announce the details on so the people here have all signed up. So but there will be other opportunities for others to sign up when we get to that time frame when we announce that.
So, are we definitely cutting off at 15, or does that mean
Yes.
if it's a certain time we're not?
No, we're going to cut off at 15, right? So the hope is with the preliminary presentation from that includes a preliminary presentation or information from the administration, and then we'll go to the 15 folks. And
I just thought we were starting with
the
15 to see how long it was.
Yeah, we're gonna go just for the 15 each. So I will. That way people know. Yeah, that way people will know. I mean, and you're obviously welcome to stay and listen to your friends and neighbors testify. But if I can, I'm looking for my latest list, and I'll read the first 15 for the folks who have signed up for CB61 and 62. Yeah, we have many of them. Many folks have signed up for both. Can we increase the volume a little bit? I want to make sure folks are hearing, and there are some folks who were concerned about not being able to
How are you doing your order based off of 61 and 62?
Yeah, I'm just looking for my list right now.
You can do almost on the
60
dates,
here.
times.
There we go. I missed it. Mine looks different. This is the 7 o'clock one. Here we go, 61. Here. Okay, well, that's not going to go tonight. Okay. So on 61, don't start reading yet. Yeah, we're doing a quick reconciliation because we have a lot of the folks who have signed up for both. So we're going the first 15 that have signed up for both. Yeah, we're going to first read just the names before we formally read in the legislation. So we're going to announce the names for both sets of legislation, just so we don't read them informally, so we have to start the testimony on it. This is what politics improvised looks like. So again, we're combining 61 and 62. If you don't mind, Ms. Ada, you're welcome to read the names as you have consolidated the list.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. That's good enough. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we tried to combine accurately, and so we're going to grab everybody who signed up for 62 at this point, that also signed up for 61, and then any additionals. So tonight we're going to have Stu Cohn, Susan Garber, Lisa Markovitz, Christiana Rigby, China Williams, Byron McFarland, Jennifer Grahams, Danny Lowe, and I'm sorry I can't pronounce your last name. Leshchyn. Lada Onishevsky, something like that. I apologize. Bright Plume. Both of those are Bright Plume. Katie Hester, Kelly Balkunas, Huri Hagu, Judy Fisher George, and Lisa Fenton Kim.
So those are on 61 and 62.
61 and 62.
So that's the APFO.
That's the APFO legislation, yes.
And so those are the only people that will be able to.
Yeah, well, that'll speak tonight. So if your name has not been called for that, we'll invite you to come back on the 11th. You're obviously welcome to stay to listen to the testimony this evening. And after those folks testify, then we're going to move on to CB60, okay? And the first 15 folks for that one. Give me a second as I go back to that.
Oh, those are here.
Yeah,
Here we go.
yeah, I've got them.
I've got those.
Yeah, James Nichol, Stu Cohn, John Shaw, Susan Garber, John Tagaris, Lisa Markovitz, Robert Long, Leslie Long, Moira MacGyver, Moira MacGyver, you'd be the last to testify. Those are the first 15. Nope, I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Nope, sorry. No, there are more. Alan Montgomery, Barbara Maloney, Donna Howard, Eileen Haggerty, David Smith, and Donna Owens. Okay. One more time on CB60, James Nichols, Stu Cohn, John Shaw, Susan Garber, John Tagaris, Lisa Markovitz, Robert Long, Leslie Long, Moira MacGyver, Alan Montgomery, Barbara Maloney, Donna Howard, Eileen Haggerty, David Smith, and Donna Owens. Okay, those will be the 15 that we'll hear from tonight on CB60. The remainder of the folks, again, you're automatically signed up for testimony on the 11th, and if there are on September 11th, and again, if we do not complete the hearing on the 11th, starting at 6, we will carry that over to the 18th. So it is our intent to hear everybody speak. Yes, Ms. Garber. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Garber. So the next person is Balkasem Mansour. Balkasem Mansour. Thank you, Ms. Garber. So would you like us to carry you over to the 11th, or you would prefer not to testify? We will do that. Thank you, ma'am. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so we appreciate your patience, your willingness to be flexible. And again, as our intent here, I hope you see, is to have everybody heard and not to carry this into the wee hours of the morning where we might lose folks who are really intent on testifying. So with that, Ms. Feldmark, if you wouldn't mind reading the next legislation for public hearing.
Council Bill 61, 2017, amending the Adequate Public Facilities Act, and Council Bill 62, 2017, amending Plan Howard 2030.
So our first four folks are Stu Cohen, Susan Garber, Lisa Markovitz, and Christiana Rigby.
Did you want to hear from Mr. DiLorenzo first?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just asking the folks to please come to the front. Yes, Mr. DiLorenzo. Thank you very much, Mr. DiLorenzo. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. I am here to testify this evening on Council Bills 61 and 62 filed by the administration. Council Bill 61 is an amendment to the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance. Council Bill 62 is an amendment to Plan Howard 2030, the county's general plan. I'd first like to begin by thanking the members of the task force, the Adequate Public Facilities Task Force, who are here this evening and who spent their time over the course of 10 months meeting to discuss and analyze this issue. It's been customary in Howard County for APFO reviews to occur via committee, and that process was replicated here as well. I'd also like to thank the council for allowing the administration to present the recommendations at your April monthly meeting. That was very helpful, and the feedback we received was also very helpful in drafting the legislation. I will briefly summarize the changes to the APFO statute that have been proposed by the administration. First is a requirement that there be an APFO review committee convened at the conclusion of every general plan cycle. An inclusion of the definition for minor subdivisions, the exemption from moderate income housing units from the allocations test, the removal of the shared allocations pool that currently exists across established communities in the growth and revitalization areas, an adjustment to developers' wait time, renaming of the Howard County Public School System's open close chart, a clarifying amendment on Howard County government facilities that are exempt from APFO, and the requirement for a planned traffic remediation project. I will also highlight that two recommendations made by the Adequate Public Facilities Review Task Force are not included in this legislation, but are intended to be pursued at a later date, specifically the change in school capacity, program capacity, from 115 to 110%, and an adjustment to the public school facility surcharge. Reason being, the public school facility surcharge requires a state enabling authority to alter, which the administration will be pursuing in the 2018 General Assembly session. Subsequent to that pursuit is when the administration will intend to proceed with those two recommendations. Council Bill 62 is an accompanying bill. There were a number of recommendations that the task force made that, although were related to APFO and growth management, were not part of the APFO statute and were addressed in other portions of the county code. One of those is an adjustment to allocations, which is part of the general plan. So the administration proceeded with the general plan amendment to alter the allocation levels. That went to the planning board in March of 2017, and that planning board recommendation has been included with the legislation. And I also would like to point out, which I'm happy to discuss in more detail, a number of the recommendations that have been satisfied or executed that did not require legislation, which I can go through with you at the work session. I'd also like to thank the Hurricane Public School System and the school board for allowing us to present these recommendations to them in June. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have this evening as you await testimony. Thank you.
Dr. Ball.
Just briefly, because I don't want to take a lot of time from folks. We had our quarterly meeting with the Board of Education this afternoon, where they indicated they needed more time to evaluate the implications of APFO, and asked us to actually look at tabling, which I think, given our continuance, we are there, I think, although no official vote has been taken. Are you all staying in contact with the Board of Education and the school system?
Yes, so we presented the APFO report to the school system on June 8th. They asked a similar question of us, that they take additional time throughout the summer to formulate their opinions. They sent the administration a series of follow-up questions that they had. We provided responses to those follow-up questions. I can certainly share those questions and responses with you so that you're aware of the direction they were going in.
Yes,
so
please
yes,
do.
we are in communication with the school system on this issue.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Colleagues, any other questions? No, and we talked briefly, the issues we discussed in terms of some comparisons to bring to the work session. That would be
Yes,
that would be
I
helpful.
will compile materials that would be
Okay,
helpful.
Excellent, thank you very much. Any other comments, questions? So if you wouldn't mind, you're welcome to have a seat over here if you'd like.
Do you want me to?
I would like you to. Just in
Okay.
case. I don't know if you'll want to, but that's fine. Very good. So we'll go into the folks that we've identified. So Stu Cohn, Susan Garber, Lisa Markovitz, and Christiana Rigby are our first four.
Good evening. My name is Stu Cohn. I reside at 8709 Yellowbird Court, Laurel, Maryland, 20723. I'm the president of the Howard County Citizens Association, HCCA, and was a proud member of the APFO task force where we met for 22 times. HCCA's position, however, is that we are in no way satisfied with the contents of CB61 as it is not ready for prime time. We cannot and should not continue to do business as usual. It's time we take the necessary measurements to include categories, as I said before, relating to quality of life issues, such as fire, police, EMS, and the hospital. If APFO was really working in its current state, then why do we see road signs which state, "Stay alert, traffic congestion, next 3 to 4 miles"? Why is it that a level service of E, used to measure the safety of roads, is passing? Why is it that about 9,000 students might be redistricted in other schools? Something is drastically wrong, to the point where the acronym of APFO should be changed to, unfortunately, ALPO, a lousy protective ordinance that no one in the county should be proud. We cannot get this wrong, especially with the vast number of units in the future. All one has to do is refer to the Development Monitoring System Report from DPZ dated April 2017 on pages 27 and 28. It lists projects that are 50 or more units. This comprises a total of almost 8,600 units, which equates to approximately an additional 20,500 individuals and over 15,000 more vehicles. Plan Howard 2030, figure 610, which you have in AFO allocation, shows that by 2030, there will be an additional 33,350 units starting in 2015. This means almost another 100,000 people and 60,000 more vehicles. Infrastructure includes the aforementioned quality of life issues found in Plan Howard 2030. Chapter 8, Public Facilities and Services. The question is, why aren't they included as part of our ABFO? I gave you a chart that has 14 counties in Maryland that are listed in that chart, 8 of which have fire. This includes Anne Arundel, Montgomery, and Prince George's. Why don't we have it? Why are the police being measured in Carroll, Montgomery, and Prince George's? In 2014, the annual police report showed we had 188,000 911 calls. Some members of the AFRO committee said, "Oh, that's not bad." You've got to be kidding me. Why is health care measured in Montgomery? Why is stormwater drainage being measured in Anne Arundel, Baltimore, Carroll, Charles, Prince George's, and St. Mary's? Chief Butler, for whom I have the utmost respect, was so concerned with cisterns in western Howard County that on several occasions he attended our AFRO task force on his own to voice his concerns. And this is so important when we get to the mulching. You can watch it on the video. Today, AFO is not providing appropriate measurement of growth in the county, and our infrastructure should be more than roads and schools. It should include the hospital, where it shows we have 78,000 individuals who went to the emergency room last year. And God knows the amount of waiting time they've had in the ED. The hospital, the good news I always hear from the county officials, that Stu, there's nothing we can do about the hospitals because it's not part of us. Well, I got news for you. We're putting in $1.2 million. I wish it was $30 million. So it is part of the government. We're putting money in. It's high time to take the necessary action whereby quality of life issues are included and our roads and schools are measured, are drastically improved before thinking about passing this bill in its current state. You are responsible for the safety, health, and welfare of your constituents. Let's do something worthwhile to once and for all ensure that AFO does not stand for adequate, but awesome protective facilities ordinance. How about once and for all making the appropriate revisions to AFO, where it would be a major part of your legacy? I am sure your constituents would appreciate this effort. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, come on. Susan Garber, thank you very much. Any questions?
Just
Mr. Garber?
really quickly, has HCCA had any conversations with the administration, given your concerns?
Yes, we did. We've had it. We had a HCC annual meeting, and we've stated it. And the bottom line is, unfortunately, what we have received, and I've received it for many years, that there's nothing we can do mainly with the quality of life issues. This is absolutely bogus. You can do something if you really want to. And again, I question, why is it that the chart, the adequate public facilities chart, inventory for Maryland jurisdictions dated the 10th of May, 2012, why is it that Howard County doesn't have some of these quality of life issues measured? It's
Okay.
ridiculous.
Thank you, Mr. Cohn.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Cohn. So we have Susan Garber, Lisa Markovitz, Christiana Rigby. We have, in reviewing our count, we do have two other folks. I want to make sure we call them Steve Hunt and Brent Lovelace for this legislation. So I just want to, I don't know that we called your names, but Ms. Garber?
Yes, I'll again be speaking on behalf of the Savage Community Association. As a professor, I often had to tell students that time expended doesn't guarantee quality of a project. Despite months of task force meetings and even more months of sitting on the third floor, the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance bill before you is anything but adequate. The task force meetings were plagued with poor attendance. The supermajority vote procedure assured that little would be accomplished. It has been said that a zebra is the result of a committee trying to design a horse. Clearly, that is what one can expect from a task force as well, and that is what we have before us. A new APFO is necessary because the county finds itself in a hole when it comes to public facilities. There is much truth to the adage that when you find yourself in a hole, you should stop digging. Due to the depth of the hole in which we find ourselves, with gridlocked roads and overcrowded schools, clearly business as usual will not suffice. There's a clear need to fill the existing hole as well as to prevent creation of new ones. Perhaps an analogy will be of assistance. Picture a large hole has opened in a roadway, maybe 5 feet across and 10 feet deep. This would be an obvious hazard to drivers and in need of our action. It's unlikely and unwise to simply leave it like that, closing one lane indefinitely. Yet that seems comparable to what we do when we continue to permit, heck, encourage, development at greater and greater densities without thinking about the effect of doing so. Now, there are many ways to deal with a hole, and our specific choices about what we do about the hole really matters. We could, of course, simply put a steel plate across it and let traffic continue over it. This obviously does nothing to fill the hole, but commuting can continue, although more slowly and less safely. But chances are the hole could expand. And isn't that what we've been doing, just cover it to make it go away? But the hole in our theoretical road does require filling, ideally with material without voids, so it won't just settle and the hole return. We need to fill it with material with appropriate compaction to avoid subsequent subsidence. And obviously, it does no good to fill it only part way. We urge the Council to consider this analogy when amending and strengthening this bill. We need you to create the proper mix to fill this hole in our county and in our hearts. We need you to add to the mix additional quality of life issues like fire, police, medical facilities, and other criteria embraced by surrounding counties. You need to examine all of the expenses that come with additional residential units. If more people necessitate a larger courthouse, for example, why isn't that factored into APFO as well? Just as filling the hole in the road only halfway doesn't solve the problem, so too must we turn to you to finish filling the school gap. To have no inclusion of high schools in APFO may be beneficial to developers, but it certainly is not beneficial to our high school students in the northeastern part of the county who will soon face enrollments of 150% capacity. No amount of redistricting will correct our school overcrowding for more than a year or two while still not eliminating any of the trailers. Don't be fooled into thinking otherwise. Here's a chance for retiring members of our council to truly leave a significant legacy. The task force and the administration have failed to produce a new APFO to realistically deal with our burgeoning inadequacies. You're our last line of defense to assure Howard County doesn't repeat the mistakes of many jurisdictions before it. If you judiciously and thoughtfully amend and strengthen this bill, without regard to political implications. You can develop the right mix or the fill to fill the voids so Howard County can sustain itself over a long period of time. And I urge you not to add an additional 200 units to our established communities. You are destroying them. If need be, just knock 200 out of the total number of allocations altogether. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garber. Any questions? Great, thank you, ma'am. Lisa Markovitz.
Hello.
Good evening.
Lisa Markovitz, President, People's Voice 3205B, Corporate Court, Ellicott City, speaking for the entity. Sorry, I forgot to give you the papers. I sat on the Apfo task force. It was a long and contentious endeavor. I didn't miss any meetings. It was near the end of an almost year-long process before we even came close to starting to pass anything substantive. There were many stakeholders of every type and a high quorum and voting requirement. Compromises had to be made to get anything meaningful done. What has been referred to as the grand deal of lowering the capacity percentage that halts development in a school district to 110% from the current 115% in return for allowing to pay out of that with larger school charges of 2 and 3 times more, passed for a reason. Apfo can only hold up development for 4 years. That may sound like a lot, but the Howard County development process takes up to 3 years already for what I like to call compliant development, meaning no requests for a new use or new zone or a waiver. Add those issues, and it is even longer, and many have those issues. So that amount of time is already planned and worked into projects. Thus, developers are waiting 1 extra year max before proceeding, regardless of how crowded a school district is. The notion was, why not get more money since it's going to proceed anyway? Many feel that the money put up for schools by developers is woefully small. It certainly is much less than surrounding counties, and I provided a link in there, which I can also email you to show you what the other counties' impact fees are. The link noted is a chart of all the Maryland counties' impact fees. Discussing raising impact fees was a non-starter on the task force. We couldn't even get a voluntary fee increase to shorten a wait passed because of fear of precedent. The grand deal took, I believe, 7 hours to hammer out on one of our last meeting dates on the subject. I support the task force recommendations. However, I do not think it is fair to wait until the state possibly allows the surcharge change, as it is their jurisdiction, to get the lower capacity percentage. That should happen now for obvious reasons, but there's a big new reason coming, redistricting. When the Apfo task force met, there was a known school system policy that no redistricting was occurring unless a new school opened. Schools are so overcrowded now, the new superintendent is faced with having to redistrict in a county-wide way, which is going to be painful. It is necessary, but considering how many people are going to be affected, we really owe it to them to not have it be very temporary. Redistricting is going to lower school capacities and open many new districts to development immediately. We are just going to fill that right back up again unless we see 110% immediately, preferably 105. So please put that in there now. As for that 4-year max wait in Apfo, in June of this year, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a ruling on a takings case that started as a disagreement on how to define the relevant amount of land in question in a parcel. However, the issues at hand go beyond that initial case subject matter. The Office of Law needs to review this ruling, please, as it appears to give local jurisdictions more rights regarding takings claims. I emailed you that info also. The last paragraph of the opinion of the Supreme Court summary states, "They have not suffered a taking under Lucas as they have not been deprived of all economically beneficial use of their property." Seems like the argument that more than 4 years is a taking may no longer apply, so that's something to consider. One last comment regarding allocations. The growth and revitalization area allows 1,200 units per year to be built currently, and the trade-off was made there to reduce that to 1,000 and increase established communities from the current 400 to 600. The area of growth and revitalization is much smaller than the area of established communities, and that's why it was considered something feasible to do. But I request that the valid concerns of established communities being increased, if you're concerned about that, you want not to increase that area, that you still consider reducing the 1,200 to 1,000 on the growth and revitalization because it's such an enormous number to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marcus. Mr. Fox?
So thank you very much for your testimony. Mr. Cook, do you mind just looking into the case that she referenced and getting back to the council on it?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
It's MURR, M-U-R-R, it's a
It-
Wisconsin.
We've
He's
already
already-
we've
I'm sure
already
you
asked
know
him.
it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, and we're, well, yeah. Yep, no, that's very good. It's in progress. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Very good. Christiana Rigby. And after Ms. Rigby, we have China Williams, Jennifer Grams, Danilo, my gosh, I am looking forward to meeting you and finding out how to say your last name. Ms. Rigby.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting the public hearing, and I'm really appreciative that so many others had the chance to have their voices heard tonight and also in September. I was going to ask you to table CB61, but it seems a given that it will be. But in part so that more residents can have their voices heard the same way that we did with affordable housing in downtown Columbia last year, but also so that you'll have time to submit amendments to make a better bill, one that truly addresses our quality of life in Howard County. As is, CB61 does not address the issue of inadequate public infrastructure, an effect that children across our community are facing with mass overcrowding and subsequent redistricting, that every resident experiences on our roads and has ripple effects throughout our neighborhoods. This is an opportunity to make real, meaningful, lasting change in our communities. Public infrastructure has not kept pace with development. In theory, we should be able to use the enrollment capacity data for a comprehensive countywide plan to identify areas where school capacity increases could be forecasted. Zoning and other regulations could guide growth away from communities where overcrowding is likely to occur. Please hear the moms, dads, grandparents who are here and insert and amend the capacity limit to 100%. I cannot think of another public building that would be allowed to operate over 120% capacity, day in and day out. Even the capacity of this room has at times been controlled to stay within the fire code. From a safety perspective, it's unacceptable that we would do this to children in our county. Allowing development to continue to add students to schools until they are more than 115 to 120% over capacity has been a key driver in overcrowding our schools. Measures that truly benefit communities must be added or amended. If a school is over capacity, it's over capacity, and development must wait. And I recognize the issue of taking, and I hope when you look into the Muir case that we find a positive resolution, because temporary portables don't count. The Apfo school test should be based upon current year enrollment and projections 3 to 5 years in the future. And that high schools count as schools. I'm sure many of you have read the How Successful Are Maryland Counties in Preventing Overcrowding report. And I won't repeat all the information, but I would encourage you to compare Anne Arundel's Apfo to ours. They have only 14% of their schools over state-rated capacity, while more than 50% of Howard's schools are overcrowded. Again, they have only 14% of their schools over state-rated capacity, and Howard has more than 50%. So thank you for tabling this bill and considering the ways that we can make real, meaningful change for our residents and create opportunity for all in Howard County.
Thank you very much. Folks, please, all right. It's a long night. We appreciate it, okay? If you feel inclined to do something, raise your hands, wave your hands, something. We just keep moving. Thank you very much. China Williams, Jennifer Grams. Okay. Good morning.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is China Williams,
There you
and I
go.
live at 3425 Huntsman Run. In the past month, I've attended 2 community meetings where passionate citizens explained how they donate their time and their expertise to the local democratic process, only to discover that special interest controls the debate. 2 different issues, industrial mulching and APFO, and 1 similar outcome. Those who will benefit financially write self-serving county legislation sponsored by the county executive with no regard to the cost or the effect on residents. I urge you to vote no on CB62 and to make major amendments to CB61. These two bills and the HCPSS's concurrent redistricting proposal will result in nearly all school districts being open to new development, leading to near-term capacity issues countywide. And CB61 should receive the following amendments: reduce closed school district capacity thresholds to 100%, add a high school test at the same school capacity threshold, increase mitigation fees to match neighboring counties, and to provide full funding of increased capital costs. Residents should not subsidize developers' profits. Remove wait time exemptions. New development should only occur if capacity is available. And there should be no unit reallocation until school and road capacity improves. And I would just like to give a little bit of perspective because I've lived in other counties and I've watched them rise and fall. All counties have a natural progression. Howard County is at a well-worn crossroads. It currently dominates the area in school success, access to jobs, and quality of life. But this isn't unique to Howard County. There will be another county that will have less traffic, more affordable homes, newer modern housing stock, newer schools, and people will migrate. They left Baltimore City for Baltimore County, and they migrated from Baltimore County to Howard County, and people will move again when the schools get too crowded and the roads get too congested and the houses become overpriced. Are we there yet? Vote no on CB62. Amend 61. Don't let Howard County jump the shark.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions? Very good. There you go. Jennifer Grahams, Danilo Leshechin, I'm going to try that. Lada Onishkovich, Katie Hester, Kelly Balkanos. If I've called your name, if you can please come to the chairs in the front. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Jennifer Grahams, 3050 Terra Maria Way, Ellicott City, HCPSS Polygon 303. I am representing Mobilize Hoco Schools, a very concerned group of more than 825 parents and residents representing every single school in our county. I'd like to begin by sharing a magazine article titled Money Magazine Names the Worst Places to Live. It reads, Howard County, Maryland, once touted as Money Magazine's best place to live in the United States, was recently placed on the endangered communities list. Bitterly torn apart by school redistricting fights resulting from the county's inadequate public facilities ordinance that failed to control development, this county, where residents once sported bumper stickers declaring choose civility, has turned into a scene reminiscent of the Hunger Games, where residents call each other by their polygon number, a reference to the zones that define which schools their children attend. This community is clearly a victim of its own success. The county's master plan does a paltry job of managing housing allocations, and the elected officials clearly value development deals over the county's educational system and public infrastructure needs. We cannot, with good conscience, recommend that anyone move to this community until the leaders recalibrate their priorities to ensure the common good. So obviously, that was a fabricated article, but sadly, it could so easily become our reality if you allow this bill to pass as written, CB61. Is this the future that you want for our county? It is not at all what I want for my family or community. Lots of people have asked me how redistricting and APFO are related, and I tell them that our county is stuck in a dysfunctional cycle of development that's bringing tax revenue and new residents, but is not adequately funding the critical infrastructure to support a growing population. The unwillingness of elected officials to adequately manage development has created the mess that our schools are facing right now with overcrowding. And in case you haven't noticed or heard tonight, redistricting is literally tearing our community apart. Only changes to tighten up the APFO legislation can prevent us from having to go through this whole process in 3 to 5 years. So first and foremost, I would like to thank you very much for taking the action to continue tonight's hearing. That was one of the first things I was going to request. This legislation will have a tremendous impact on Howard County's reputation as a desirable place to live and work, as you know. And we believe that it merits thorough vetting, consideration, and community process. And so we greatly appreciate your action tonight in allowing more folks to speak on September 11th. We are advocating for 3 specific actions. The first is that the adjustment to the school capacity threshold must be unbundled from the financial mitigation piece and voted on as a standalone amendment to CB61. These 2 issues were artificially put together as a compromise deal by the APFO committee, but as parents, we are not willing to compromise on our children's education. We want the school capacity to be set at 100% for elementary, middle, and high schools. There's no need to wait on lowering that capacity. There's no state legislature requirement that that be approved. Please do that now. Secondly, the mitigation cost for new development needs to reflect the full cost for added school space. It costs $20,000 to $50,000 per student to build a new school. The average new home in Howard County is contributing about $5,000 toward that cost. Who makes up the difference? We do. The taxpayers are subsidizing the new development that creates our overcrowded schools, and then we're paying again for the solution. Not to mention the amount of time that it takes to plan for and build a new school, even if you have the money in hand. This inequity must be addressed by increasing the amount of money paid by new developments and/or increasing the years that development may be halted in areas where schools are already closed. And finally, while our primary focus is on schools, we also believe that APFO should include additional public facilities tests to make sure that fire, public safety, hospitals, water, sewer, libraries, recreation facilities are all adequate. We are all very fortunate to live in this county. There's absolutely no reason for us to give away our land at the expense of our children's education and our quality of life. If we want to continue to keep Howard County a desirable place to live and work, we need an updated APFO that pairs responsible growth with adequate funding in support of our infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions? Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Grams. Danilo Sheshes, I am looking forward to you telling us how to say your last name. Whenever you're ready.
Good evening. My name is Danilo Lischishin. I live at 6200 Bright Plume, Columbia, Maryland, 21044. And I would like to begin by reaffirming the respect I have for the honorable members of this council and express my gratitude for allowing residents to share their opinions on matters affecting them. I side with my honorable friends in arguing for the strengthening of the adequate public facilities ordinance out of logic. To be frank, it is my humble opinion that allowing developers to build new residences until schools reach over 110% capacity is misguided, and allowing that threshold to increase to 120%, as developers argued in the 2014 Maryland Business Industry Association letter attached in your packet, is plainly irresponsible. The developers who want to build here are not investing in Howard County because they have some interest in its continuing prosperity. They're businesses, and they seek to increase their profits, which is purely logical. But their profit does not equal our benefit. We can see this in the MBIA letter in your packet. It blithely argues that raising our school capacity threshold to 120% would result in an increased capacity of 1,235 students at the elementary school level, quote, without making any capital improvements. As if those 1,235 students were mere numbers on a page and not actual children who need physical space to occupy. Our schools were not designed to be overcrowded. The elementary, middle, and high schools were built for 100% capacity, not 110%, and certainly not 120%. These developers may argue that the new developments will be good for everyone, but think about this logically. If we do not reform the proposed APFO legislation, schools will not have the resources to provide the high-quality education HCPSS is famous for to the vastly increased number of students in our county. Our students, as a consequence, will graduate as less skilled and less valuable economic contributors. Over the years, the quality of graduates will tarnish the reputation of Howard County schools, one of Howard County's greatest sources of economic prosperity. Ultimately, the local economy will deteriorate as Howard County will no longer be a desirable place to resettle and raise a family. To put it simply, it does not bode well. Please amend the proposed APFO legislation to 100% capacity threshold and include high schools in these considerations. Do what is best for your constituents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Great, thank you very much for coming in.
You seeked the pronunciation of my surname?
It's Lischeshin.
Leschetian.
Leschetian.
Yes,
All right, Leschetian.
it's Ukrainian.
Ukrainian. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Dobry вечер. Did I get that right? Good evening. In Russian. It's Russian, not Ukrainian. Sorry. Bad choice of words. I am of Ukrainian descent as well. So thank you. My grandmother was born in Kiev. So
Slava Ukraini.
thank you. Have a great evening. Lada Onashkevich. I'm going to get this right. Onashkevich. Yeah. Yeah. I won't go.
Good evening. My name is Lada Onishkevich, 6200 Bright Plume, Columbia 21044. Thank you, council members, for tabling CB61 and 62 so that more people may testify. There is nothing more important to Howard County parents than our schools. But as you are aware, we are currently facing a massive school redistricting of nearly 9,000 students at every level throughout the county. Many students who currently walk to their neighborhood schools will be bused further away as HCPSS struggles to cope with rapid population growth. Schools such as Atholton High School, where my children attend, face a turnover of 2/3 of their student body. The reason why thousands of Howard County families will have their lives disrupted is, of course, rampant overdevelopment. Since there is even more development already in the pipeline, we are sure to see more and more extensive redistricting in the coming years. In CB61, you have the opportunity to at least limit the damage that has been done. Both the current APFO law and its proposed replacement are much too weak. APFO should protect citizens rather than developers. Our school capacity threshold should be set at 100%, not 115%, not 110%. We teach our children that 100% means full, after all. High school capacities should be included in APFO too, not just elementary and middle schools. No new development should be allowed in areas where schools are over 100% until new schools can be built there. We cannot keep redistricting our way out of this rapid population growth. Yes, building new schools is expensive and takes time. This is why the burden for paying for these new schools should fall on the developers, not on the rest of us. Current financial mitigation measures come nowhere close to covering the true cost of new seats in our schools. The proposed public school facilities surcharges are also insufficient and should be sharply increased. We should not be trading reduced capacity thresholds for increased allocations in established neighborhoods in CB62. Schools in these established neighborhoods are already strained, thus the radical redistricting we are facing. Our guiding principle should be what's good for our schools and our children, not what's easier for developers. Please listen to the citizens who elected you, not the developers. Please limit the damage being done to our schools and our communities. Strengthen the APFO legislation that is before you in CB61, and do not allow the trading or increase in allocations in our general plan in CB62. Our future and your own legacy is in your hands.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much. Katie Hester.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, council members. My name is Katie Hester, and I live at 3701 Red Oak Lane, Ellicott City, Maryland. I've been a resident of Howard County for 15 years, and I have 2 girls, ages 8 and 11. I also work in the niche field of facilitating public-private partnerships. Most of my work has been in Africa and Latin America around sustainable development. And many of the people that I work with on a day-to-day basis would appreciate having the conversation that we're having here tonight. I'd like to thank the council for agreeing to table and provide additional opportunities to hear testimony. And I'd like to ask all of those in the audience who agree with the council's suggestion to table the legislation to wave their hands. Great. So Howard County is a sought-after place to live, which is why we're all here. And the school system is one of the reasons among many. AFPO needs to be strengthened as it currently allows development to proceed, causing overcrowding and conditions throughout the school system, stress on the roads, and our services such as police, fire, and healthcare facilities. At the same time, several of our families in the neighborhood that I live in will be affected by the redistricting. One of the women I was talking to tonight, her family has been bounced back and forth between Waverly and St. John's Lane for several times over every 5 years. And while the council doesn't oversee redistricting, it is a direct result of what the council does include, what the council does oversee: APFO regulations, planning, zoning, and development. From my perspective, I see a process problem on which redistricting is a temporary Band-Aid. A friend of mine wrote an excellent blog recently which asked the question, unless we consider the redistricting and the APFO at the same time in parallel, aren't we going to be in the same place in 3 years we are today? And while the APFO review and in 3 years, when the comprehensive general plan and another APFO review are scheduled to take place. What I think we need is a more holistic, systems-based thinking approach that takes a longer-term perspective and looks at the best, at what's in the common good of everyone. So some of the process questions that I have are, first of all, is there a way for the County Council and the Board of Education to work more closely together? I understand that there's constant communication, but could there be more of a partnership around a shared vision for what both the council and the school board want? Secondly, in a town hall in May, the county executive acknowledged that property taxes are not nearly enough to cover the critical infrastructure related to schools. My question is, are there more innovative ways that the county can engage the private sector to ensure that the rate of construction and the rate of infrastructure development proceed at the same place? Mitigation fees obviously should reflect the actual cost of building new schools in the areas that need the capacity, but fees and private sector don't go well together. Is there anything more creative that could be done? What about like a competition for the most innovative solution? So in closing, I just want to say that I'm a proponent of planned growth and development. And one of the reasons that I moved to Columbia originally was because of the way James
If you can wrap up,
Rouse
that'd be great.
designed it. So thank you for tabling and considering additional amendments and innovative solutions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hester. Any questions? Kelly Balkunas. Yeah, and then after Kelly, we have Hiri Hagdu, Judy Fisher-George, Lisa Fenton-Kim. You can come on down.
Hi.
Hello.
Good evening, Chairman Weinstein, members of the council. My name is Kelly Balchunas, and I'm a resident of District 5. I'm here tonight to represent the PTA at Waverly Elementary. I'm actually the PTA president. In speaking out against CB61 and CB62, thank you for tabling these amendments or tabling these bills for now. It's important to note that both of these bills give far too much consideration to developers and not enough to the students, families, and taxpayers of Howard County. We, as your constituents, are the ones that matter. We've noted changes to the school capacity threshold are not even included in CB61. It's unfortunate that elected officials have made the choice to link school capacity to financial mitigation by developers. In linking these two together, this won't be addressed until the fall, and changes to capacity thresholds need to be addressed now. This alone should table the bill until school capacity concerns can be added as an amendment to CB61. The primary interest of taxpayers in this county is the stellar reputation of the Howard County Public School System. Development is negatively impacting this well-deserved reputation. You can see it in schools that are bursting at the seams, in students that are attempting to learn in portable classrooms, with teachers who are doing their professional best to teach 32nd grade students in a single class. The signs of overdevelopment are everywhere. They're not good. When the school system begins to show this continued pressure of overcrowding, all of us will feel the effects. It's because of the county's incredibly weak and outdated APFO guidelines that heavily favor developers that HCPSS is experiencing a dire overcrowding crisis. Our current APFO guidelines state that schools are not closed to neighboring development until they reach 115% of capacity, and worse, high school capacity is not even included in APFO. So let's do some simple math. Council members, when was the last time you could spend 115% of the funds in your bank account? Or use 115% of the fuel in your car before it ran out of gas? Or when you're hungry, eat 115% of a pizza? Or fill 115% of the seats on an airplane with passengers? It's ridiculous. 100% is 100%. It's for me. It's for all the constituents that are here tonight in this room, and it should be for each and every one of you, and also for developers. Every elementary, middle, and high school should reach maximum capacity at 100%, not 115%, or even the concession of 110%. In addition to eliminating these inflated capacity thresholds, developers need to be accountable for their actions in this process. They need to pay their fair share of funds toward public infrastructure, stop allowing them to build using fancy tax incentives and TIFs. To ensure necessary funds are available to construct schools from continued residential growth, developer mitigation fees should be increased to reflect actual per-student costs required to build a school. Right now, hardworking taxpayers are subsidizing these costs for developers, while developers are maximizing their profits and children in overcrowded schools are paying the price. With all of these conditions being favorable for development, it's no wonder developers can't wait to build here. School overcrowding does not rest solely on the shoulders of HCPSS. All parties and officials owe it to taxpayers and students of this county to do their part. Let me remind you what Mr. Michael Harrison, VP for Government Affairs of MBIA, thinks is appropriate for developers. He's lobbying the council and executive to raise the capacity threshold to 120%. He's lobbying the council and county executive to decrease the amount of time a developer has to wait to build in a closed school district to only 1 year, because in his words, 1 year is enough time to make redistricting decisions and plan for growth, despite the board's unwillingness to do so. He also says growth is coming from within the county rather than new growth to the county, and that's the real problem. That's quite the notion when you look at the development and the explosion of growth along Route 1 and in sprawling developments like Turf Valley. And it's those schools and areas that are overcrowded that are the most overcrowded too. We know developers have been in this room tonight, and there's probably members of MBIA too, but who do you represent? Do you represent their interests or do you represent ours? We are your constituents, not the developers, not MBIA. We voted for you to represent our interests, and our interests are not paying for overcrowded schools. Our interests are not developing every blade of available grass. In summary, each and every one of us were elected by you, the voters. Each and every one of you were elected by us, the voters, to represent the best interests of us. We are your constituents. Your constituents are telling you the current APFO is totally inadequate and need to be strengthened in favor of students and schools. Your constituents want schools that are not overcrowded, which means 100% capacity and not the magic math put forth by developers of 115 or 120%. And your constituents want developers to stop maximizing their profits on our backs. And it means that developers need to pay their fees that actually match the cost of adding new seats to schools when their actions create overcrowding. It's time that you, as our elected officials, do the right thing by us. And thanks once again for tabling 61 and 62.
Thank you. Mr. Fox?
So just one thing real quick, and this actually I've seen in a couple of testimonies, and so I don't want to get into the opinions of things, but just for the record, Michael Harrison left the home builders over 2 years ago.
Great.
So, yeah, I'm just saying, no, but, no, that's fine. I just want to make sure everybody knows that, so I think there was the letter or whatever was from, I don't know.
2014.
It's from the
14 or
county
something.
executive and county
From-
council
from
retreat in November of 2014.
Yeah, that was, yeah, it was actually the prior executive, yeah, so, so it's,
No, it was,
right
it was,
November
Right,
14?
we got elected.
right after
Right
the
when we got
election.
in or something. So I just want to know, he's gone. I don't even know the name of the current gentleman. I don't know if you guys do, but.
Josh Green?
Josh Green.
Yeah, so it's
Greenfield.
a different person altogether.
Okay, it's good to know. I did send you an email too, Mr. Fox, and I haven't heard back from your office, but
All right.
just wanted to let you know that. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Hurry Hogdo, Judy Fisher George, Lisa Fenton Kim. Is George, you still here?
Yes.
Okay, great. Oh, there you are. Sorry, I couldn't see you from, yeah, I feel it's mutual.
Hurry Hadgu, 8763 Lincoln Street, Savage, Maryland, 20763. A county that wants to grow is faced with a dilemma when considering timing of availability of public facilities. One choice is to grow first and then use tax revenue from the resulting tax base to build out its facilities to meet the needs of added population. Alternatively, it can build out the facilities in hopes that growth will come as people move to the area, which will allow it to recoup the cost incurred due to expanded facilities. Howard County seems to have chosen the first alternative of growth first and public facilities later. Other counties have to rely on growth first before expanding facilities because there is uncertainty about people's willingness to move. We know that Howard County is considered a desirable place to live for many reasons, including its schools. So we don't face the same uncertainty. I believe this allows us to make sure that our facilities are able to meet the increased demands before growth occurs. The bill before the County Council, which has been characterized by some as a compromise between developers and residents, sadly does not reflect the need to look out for the welfare of residents. We don't have two stakeholders in this deal. There's only one, and that is the residents of the county. After all the land has been built on and all the houses have been sold, the developers will leave and the residents will be left holding the bag. As it usually happens, resources will dwindle, quality will go down, and those with means will leave the county for better living conditions. The tax base that remains will not have the ability to cover the cost to maintain existing facilities, which will lead to a large amount of county debt. I'm opposed to the bill in its current form, and it's not enough to just table the legislation, and I think it needs major changes, and I support the following proposals. First, we need to stop approvals of any development that can impact any public facilities, even if it's already accounted for in existing schools and open-close charts. The post-measures open-close chart from the current feasibility report is basically a green light for additional development, and we need to incorporate the lessons learned from the current experience in the new Apfo. Other suggestions I have to create an inter-county government working group that comprises of the school board and the administration's planning department that creates a single open-close chart, making sure that the program capacity limit is 100%, including the high schools and the allocation test, and include additional tests such as environmental impacts in police and fire. I'm not anti-growth. I think Howard County has the ability to demand better terms when it comes to allocations so that we are able to cover costs and expenses, and that's what we should do. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Judy Fisher-George. And we have Lisa Fenton Kim, Steve Hunt, and Brent Lovelace. Ms. George.
How many times have I sat here and said I was going to bring my army of angry? Because they're here. Do you see all the yellow? I did that. I want you to realize that one angry mama can do this. And there's a whole bunch of people who didn't come because they're not gluttons for punishment and don't love to sit in these seats for hours on end. I know I'm weird, but I'd really enjoy taking part of the process. We already know all the things that we need to do on this bill. I don't need to tell you about the 100%, where we need to start the mitigation at 100 instead of 115. I don't need to tell you about having to revisit the 4 years. I shouldn't have to tell you that MIHUs count, because they do, because babies come out of MIHU units just like every other unit. So let's be realistic. How can you not count MIHUs when they produce children and they flush toilets? I just don't understand that. I think we can all say no to the grand compromise, which we all know is a flaming pile of, we don't need it. We can do it without, we can separate the two things out. We deserve that. In terms of CR62, let's just do less allocations overall. And absolutely, let's get rid of the rollover. The rollover has done so much harm to our children and our ability to plan logically, which I understand logic has absolutely no room in this room. There's no room for logic. It's all emotion. But for once, I would like somebody to actually say, wait a minute, let's do what's right. I know you guys just have a little bit less than 18 months left, and I would hope that in your remaining time, you make use of the ability to make fabulous amendments that I really hope to see in this room one more time.
John, that was all foreshadowing. You know.
I'm going to avoid a comment at this time. Lisa Fenton Kim? I'm trying. I've got nothing left. Steve Hunt, and then Brent Lovelace.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Kim. I am residing at 8431 Ice Crystal Drive, Laurel, Maryland, 20723. I attended the BOE quarterly meeting today, and you were asked to table the bill for further review. The PTAs have asked you to table the bill, and I ask you to table the bill as it was only introduced on July 3rd. We need time to make amendments to the quality of life issues that aren't adequately addressed in APFO. Also, the last I checked, 100% was the maximum. Why is 110% acceptable? You wouldn't get in an elevator that was at 110% capacity. Why is it okay for our schools, and why is it okay for our children? We are relaying to you here tonight that it is not acceptable. As you heard today at the BOE quarterly meeting, we are in a $20 million deficit every year in our school budget. And next year it will be $40 million, and in 3 years it will be $60 million. We need to not be fearful of an entire overhaul of APFO. Let's do what is best for us, and let's do the work and actually pay attention to the troubled areas of APFO instead of pretending and ignoring these areas, because the consequences of the neglect and the purposeful abandonment of our needs are not pretend. I implore you to do the right thing and to do right by us, because after all, you do serve us above all others. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Very good. Mr. Hunt, Steve Hunt, and Brent Lovelace.
Good evening again. Steve Hunt, 9630 Park Avenue, Laurel, Maryland. A couple of thank yous. First to the council for tabling these bills. That was going to be part of my testimony on CB61, was to request that. I think it's summer vacation. PTAs and other parents and stakeholders aren't back around, and plus there is another exercise going on with redistricting that has sucked up a lot of energy for a lot of folks that are advocates for our schools. I also want to thank the APFO Task Force for their efforts. Having been in groups like that, I appreciate all that they've done. I've watched a lot of their hearings, so I really appreciate what they've done. I want to focus on CB62, which I absolutely do oppose. On the surface, it seems it's harmless. You're moving 200 allocations from here to here. The growth revitalization zones are usually next to the established communities. But when you look at where the growth and development happens within those established communities, you will see that there's a problem. I live in such a community. Since I moved to my development in 2000, it has doubled in size. A lot of it was part of the plan when they first started developing the community. But a lot of it is due to growth that was not expected, what some refer to as infill, where one house comes down and it's replaced by 2 or 3, or an example behind my house, 4. These are single-family homes. They have kids. They impact our schools. Our local elementary school was so overcrowded, it was threatening to be closed. The only thing that fixed that was an addition that was put on the school. We were lucky. We had the land to do that. Some schools don't have that luxury to be able to put an addition, or in the case of Wild Lake Middle, build another school. So my belief is that number should not be increased by 200. I appreciate the fact that the shared pool may be going away. I agree with Ms. Fisher-George that the rollover should absolutely go away as well. A few other quick observations in terms of APFO in general. I believe the high school test should absolutely be included. They don't stop counting just because they hit the 9th grade. I also believe that there should be a separation between the schools test and this financial deal that's going on here. I also think that if you're not going to take it down to 100%, which you should, there should at least be some trigger mechanism that says when it hits 100, you start the conversation. Right now, the conversation starts at 115. That's not the way it should work. Even if it's a projection of 115, when you hit 100, you should start thinking about ways to mitigate. Overall, I think that it's a good idea to, again, table these bills, allow for more community input, more conversation. It's necessary, it's needed, and it's the right thing to do. So I thank you guys for your leadership in doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Any questions? Very good. Thank you. Mr. Lovelace. After Mr. Lovelace, we'll conclude the testimony for now on CB61 and 62.
Good segue. I'm on both sides of these issues here. Brent Lovelace, 9570 Whiskey Bottom Road, Laurel, Maryland. Actually, I only signed up for CB62. I was optimistic that I could talk on 61 in the fall, but we'll see how that works. 62, we've addressed with it effectively changes allocations as part of a compromise deal that was reached in the task force to move from one section to the other, and in particular going more into the established communities. This kind of flies in the face of the whole smart growth principle, of which there were white papers written many years ago by the Building Association called Unintended Consequences of APFO, and one of the unintended consequences is not following smart growth initiatives. Despite the planning board disagreeing with the layout, they felt it wasn't a great idea. I'm going to go off the book here, and I'd like to thank our county executive for putting together a task force on this issue. It's a political landmine. I'd like to thank you, Carl, for putting these proposals together for us to review. I'd like to thank the council for reviewing these and hopefully putting some substantial improvements to these. And I'd like to thank all the families behind me right now who came out and are not complacent anymore. And please, anybody who's here because they feel we could do better with schools, would they mind standing up? Anybody who feels we can do better with fire, please stand up. Police, stormwater management, solid waste. Mr. Danis, solid waste, come on. I think you can see there is a large group of people who are willing to support and back you if you do the most substance and highest quality APFO revisions coming forward. I and my family among them, and many more who are still learning and will be willing to support you come this fall. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Very good. Thank you. So that's it for CB61 and 62. We appreciate those of you who stayed for the entirety of that portion, and we look forward to seeing those who are scheduled to testify but weren't able to tonight to come back in September 11th, to continue the conversation. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we truly appreciate your flexibility and moving with us tonight. So we're going to continue this public hearing on September 11th at 6 o'clock, and beginning with the Apfo legislation and then moving back to CB60. Thank you all and have a good morning.